UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Welcome to Franchise Fatigue, the podcast on the United Federation of Podcasts, devoted to films and their sequels and their remakes. I'm your host, Brandon-Shea, and joining me is my ever-constant co-host, Zach Moore. How are you, my friend?
Who are you really, Brandon?
Who am I really? I am really... I don't know. I'm that millionaire guy who apparently likes to get beat up by women.
Anyway, moving on.
That's who I'm going to be. The guy from season 8 of 24. So,
okay.
I don't know. The guy that was in the I don't know his names. You guys know me. I don't know characters' names. I'm really bad with character names.
Happy to be here, Brandon.
Happy to be here. Excellent. Right on. Happy to be here. Happy to have a lot of fun. Happy to talk.
I try to use quotes from the movie for the last couple of times for like this kitschy cold open. And it goes right over your head. And it just goes off on some weird tangent, but that's fine. Moving on. We have a very special guest.
It's funnier that way. So our special guest, and she is definitely not wearing a mask, Amy Nelson. How are you doing, Amy?
Hi, guys. I am doing great. So thankful that you are having me on today.
Excellent. We are happy to have you here. You are our second guest right after Mike Schindler over on episode 2, talking about Mission Impossible 2. So we are very happy to have you here. Now, Amy... this is your first run-through of the Mission Impossible films, is it not?
No.
Oh, okay.
I saw them in the movies when they came out, but that was so long ago that I don't remember. I couldn't tell you any storyline at all. So I am rewatching it with you guys as you go through and drop your podcasts.
Have you seen all 6 of them?
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen the last one.
It just came out last summer. Yeah, it just came out last summer.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one. Rogue Nation, I don't remember. I may have not. Again, I see them and then they're just in one eye and out the other. So,
excellent. Well, we're loving these movies. We're having a lot of fun. Zach, I had mentioned that I had done a retweet of something very interesting before we started recording here, and this is a tweet that is... as of this recording, it is an hour and a half old. And, you know, the day that we are recording.
Way to date the podcast, Brandon. Yes, breaking news from 3 weeks ago by the time you guys listen to this episode. Go ahead.
Yes, breaking news. An hour and a half old as we record. This is the day that all the Star Trek Section 31 news dropped as well. Christopher McQuarrie just tweeted, missions accepted, Mission Impossible. And it says missions... plural. What do you think about that?
So you think that he is coming back for not just Mission Impossible 7, Mission Impossible 8. That's my first take on that. What do you think, Brandon? Yeah,
a couple. I think he's coming back for 2 more, because he did 5, right?
Correct. He did 5. He did 6. He actually did a little work on 4. We'll talk about that. And now it sounds like he might be coming back for more. He's the only director who's directed more than one.
Yep.
And to great success. So it makes sense if they want to keep this going to bring him back. And I'm excited for that. That's great news.
Yeah. Now, hypothetical, in the day and age that we live in and whatnot, what if this might be like he could be like launching the prequel series or a spin-off series?
I have no interest in that. I think these are great blockbusters, and I like how they're self-contained, and there's unlike a lot of other movie franchises these days, you can go into this movie, you can have a good time, you can leave this movie, and then go about your life, and then revisit it when you want to have a good time, and it's not dependent on this like interactive or interconnected universe, I should say, and that's a very unique thing in this day and age, and I hope that this franchise maintains that and doesn't become some giant web of TV shows and comic book tie-ins and video games and all that. I like what they are, and I want them to keep being what they are.
Now, Amy, so yeah, if you don't remember number 5 and you haven't seen number 6 yet, then yeah, like 5 and 6 are pretty darn good. 6 is, we'll get to again, is probably my favorite when we get to it. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I think it was really well done. But what if, though, Zach, what if you could tie it into the Back to the Future universe?
That is, again, I don't... Back to the Future, another franchise that I appreciate. It's just a trilogy of movies.
Yes, I remember from
no
episode 0.
Remakes, sequels, any of that. Now, if they wanted to cross over with Men in Black, there might be a case for it, Brandon.
Men in Black possible?
Exactly.
Something like that?
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. We'll see what happens.
Men Impossible.
Men in Impossible? Something.
No crossovers, okay? No
okay.
crossovers, no TV shows, no prequels. Just keep on keeping on with what you're doing, Mission Impossible franchise.
Okay.
That's my take.
Well, that tweet is an hour and a half old. It's pretty exciting. I retweeted it on our timeline. I said, this is acceptable. So...
I get it.
I like it. I'm pretty stoked. But we're not here to talk about the future of the franchise. Not yet. Now we're talking about movie number 4, which is called Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And to lead us off in our discussion, as he does every week, is our information packet so that we know how to do this mission and whether or not we should accept it, is all the behind-the-scenes trivia done by Zach Moore.
That's right, guys. Well, you mentioned that it's called Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. This is the first Mission Impossible movie without a number after it, right? You had Mission Impossible, of course, the first one, then 2, then 3. And Tom Cruise was actually very happy when he learned that this was going to be the title because he had never been a fan of the numbers at the end of the sequel titles because he'd always considered each film as like a standalone adventure. And that kind of, the numbers kind of make it, in order, which is kind of ironic because... at the beginning of the franchise, everything was extremely episodic and everything had numbers. But now, things are actually there's a lot of continuity going on, and there's no numbers, so it's actually more confusing the way they ended up doing it. But anyway, be that as it may, Mission Impossible 4, right, was originally targeted for a May 2011 release with J.J. Abrams to direct, but Super 8 not only did Super 8 delay Star Trek Into Darkness, it also delayed this film. Because J.J. Abrams just took forever to make Super 8, so he was busy working on that, so he backed out of directing, but he stayed on to produce. Bad Robot, that same team, is involved in this film. But Brad Bird made his live-action directorial debut with this movie. He's famous for animation, such as Iron Giant and The Incredibles, but this was his first jump into live action. So
I didn't know he did Iron Giant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So he's got a good resume.
Yes. Now, Mike Schindler has talked a few times. Now, we love Mike Schindler, and he's got some interesting ideas sometimes. And he said that what he thought would have been really cool when he heard Brad Bird was doing this movie is if Brad Bird would have, like, all these directors bring their style to the movies and whatnot. He's like, Brad Bird should have made this an animated film.
That's, no, I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yes, I think I'm okay with what they've done here too. I'm just it's interesting if that's what he does, if that's what his thing is that he brings to the franchise, then maybe that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, and then he took the success of this movie and went on to do Tomorrowland, which bombed and then led to Disney canceling Tron 3 and buying Star Wars. So thanks, Brad Bird. Brad Bird also turned down directing The Force Awakens. So J.J. Abrams took that over. So it's an interesting reversal of this film. Where J.J. was going to direct, Brad Bird did it, and then Disney offered Episode 7 to Brad Bird, but he turned it down to do Tomorrowland. So, but, we all make mistakes. But then he's moved on to Incredibles 2, and he's back in his animation world. So that's a little bit of the director trivia here. This film was actually the first of the franchise to use IMAX photography. I think it was about a good portion of the film. I don't know exactly how much was filmed in IMAX, and then they actually made a special 6-minute prologue for The Dark Knight Rises. Also showed before this film in its IMAX presentation. To be honest, that's the reason I went to go see Ghost Protocol. I mean, not that I didn't care, but it had been a good 5 years or so since the last movie, and I was like, whoa, I thought this franchise was kind of over. Especially the way the third one ended. It had been so long. Right, but I was like, oh, they got the Dark Knight, they got the Dark Knight trailer in front of it. We a prologue. We got to go see it, So I went and saw it and was very glad I did. But anyway, For the new, we had some new characters, of course. Jane Carter, played by Paula Patton. It's of interest to me. Kristen Cruick from Smallville was actually considered to play this character. I think they made the right choice going with Paula Patton. And again, Brandon, as we mentioned, we don't really know much about the original TV show. But Paula Patton's character's last name is Carter. It was possibly a tribute to Barbara Bain, who was a original series Star Trek guest star a couple times. She played Cinnamon Carter on the TV show, so that name is probably a reference to that character.
Cinnamon Carter.
Yeah, it sounds like a Bond girl's name.
Yes, it does.
So we see our debut of Jeremy Renner's character of Brant. He goes on to continue in the franchise, and he was specifically created to be the eventual replacement for Tom Cruise if he ever chose to leave the franchise. So that didn't really pan out because Tom Cruise is Mission Impossible and he's still doing it. I find that amusing that this is the second time this happened to Jeremy Renner. We had the Bourne trilogy with Matt Damon. They made the Bourne Legacy with Jeremy Renner. Everyone's like, we don't care. We want Matt Damon. So they came back with Jason Bourne with Jeremy Renner nowhere to be seen. So Jeremy Renner cannot catch a break. Now, Michael Nyqvist, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He plays the main villain of the film. You might recognize him from the John Wick, the first film. He's the big bad guy at the end of John Wick. He actually has a big drawn-out throwdown fight with Keanu Reeves at the end, which is kind of the opposite of what happens here. When him and Ethan Hunt don't really have much of a fight. They just fight over a suitcase. And another star from another spy franchise will be Léa Seydoux, who plays the assassin here. She goes on to play James Bond's love interest in Spectre.
Okay.
So just a few years down the road. So I've often said that I don't think I've said it here on the podcast yet, but I say this in talking to people about movies. The Mission Impossible movies are what the James Bond movies used to be. At least that's my feel of it, and I find it interesting that they're borrowing actresses and actors now from the Mission Impossible movies to go be in James Bond films. Speaking of returning characters, we had a couple of returning characters who had some uncredited cameos. Ving Rhames returned as Luther for the tag scene at the end, as well as Michelle Monaghan returned as Julia in the tag scene at the end. So that was great for them to come back. I think to kind of tie the continuity back with number 3. And finally, Tom Wilkinson is uncredited. He appears as the IMF secretary. Now, me and Mike, you heard part of this on the podcast for Mission Impossible 2. We were arguing about if he was in 2 movies, and I swear, I really thought, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I thought oh yeah, Tom Wilkinson, that's cool. They brought him back for another movie, and that just stuck with me as I've been rewatching the movies. And yes, Mike was right. I was wrong. This is his only movie. This is his only scene. I should have known better than to question Mike's movie knowledge, so I stand corrected on that.
Shame on you.
Shame on me, right? Now, this is the first film to use Paramount Pictures' 100th anniversary logo. It comes up at the beginning. We see the big 100 on the mountaintop there. So just because of the years they've all come out, all the Mission Impossible movies have had different Paramount logos of different kinds. And the original opening scene was supposed to be a younger Hendrix, who's Michael Nyqvist. I keep butchering his name, but preparing for his speech about the nuclear endgame of the world. Mm-hmm. That didn't really work as intended, so they scrapped it for the action opening. Now we see part of what would have been that scene because we see him giving the speech near the middle of the movie on the video. So that would have tied together to that. Speaking of the original series of Mission Impossible, the hologram reflector projector, that was actually a gadget from the original show, from season 4, episode The Falcon Part 3. So that actually took some inspiration. I thought that was a really cool gadget. We'll talk about that later, but it's cool that had its origins in the original show. Speaking of that gadget, the whole gag there with the guard looking at the wall, there was more to that. They filmed more moments where he gets kind of closer and closer, and Benji's kind of freaking out that he's going to get discovered. But they edited that down because they thought, okay, that's getting really ridiculous for a guy to be 2 feet away from this projection and not be able to see. And I think that was the right decision. I think it played out very well the way it was. Now, this is also the first installment of the franchise where none of the villains are or used to be IMF agents. I think that's an interesting point because you have so many double agents and turncoats and stuff. It was nice that to have for once no one's going to turn evil who used to work for IMF, because IMF creates its own villains almost. Mm-hmm. And finally the tag in the movie where Ethan Hunt is called for his next mission to fight, quote, the Syndicate, is actually picked up on in the next movie. So unlike a lot of these other ones where it's all left vague and very episodic, this one is literally setting up the next movie. So they had some idea of where they were going. And last bit of trivia, we were mentioning Christopher McQuarrie off the top. He actually did